Hi everyone, we're Hernandez and Karen Melendez, and this is our project that is called Approximation to the Term Immersion as Used in Colombian Educational Settings. It's important for us to clarify that this is an ongoing research project, so the information that we have in here uh, is acceptable to be modified in the next days. Let's start to explain about the projects.
So, our project was born because our concern to know if the immersion programs in Colombia has taken the immersion concept that some theorists stated about this concept. So, what we try to do is to review the literature about immersion that has been written in all the world to contrast the national and international immersion programs, and also to analyze this with the participants' voice. So, for this purpose, um, what we try to do is to analyze how immersion is understood in Colombia. So, first, in this project, we present our research problem and explain possible solutions for it. Second, we state the conceptualization of the term immersion, taking into account the theory about this phenomena. Third, we show how other countries develop this model, taking into account the theory or not. And finally, our methodological design is aiming to explain um, how this phenomenon is tackled here in Colombia and how the stakeholders of the immersion programs understood this process and the concept. Okay, first of all, we have a first draft of our poster that was this. But as we wanted to do more interactive this presentation, we changed the format of the poster, but not the information. The information remains the same.
Okay, as Dari was saying, for us, it's really important to clarify how the term immersion was conceptualized here in Colombia and how this concept has been carried out, uh, taking into account the variety and also the diversity of contexts that we have here inside the country. Also, this project is based on the linguistic immersion programs. It doesn't matter if they are private programs or are connected to the government. We are going to take all these programs to analyze them, and we work in here in this project under the question: how are the Colombian immersion programs developed in regards to the initial theoretical concept? So what we want to do in here is to contrast the theory about this topic. Mainly, the theory comes from international documents or from international authors, taking into account the kind of programs were developed at first in Canada, and to contrast this theory with the practices that have been carried out, sorry, here in Colombia. So this is our main objective.
Okay, so taking into account our research concern, the question, and the research objectives, we develop our methodology taking into account, firstly, the qualitative approach. Okay?
In regards to the qualitative approach, we take the perspective of Johnson and Christensen in 2017, and they explained the qualitative research as a kind of research that analyzes the different groups and their different realities, their perspectives, and also how their social constructions influence the way in which they see or they answer. So we take the perspective of Johnson and Owen Busey in 2004 when they say that qualitative research is used to um, analyze or to study a phenomenon, something that the researcher wants to discover or learn more about it, because it's not a phenomenon that has been reported a lot, but it is not recognized by the rest of people.
Okay, it is also important to mention that for us is really essential to know that the qualitative research try to see the different perspective from a group of people. So also we are not interested in generalizing this kind of concepts, but we are interested in see how the perspective change in each kind of participant. Okay, well, also we take into account um, the phenomenological research, taking into account the theory of Creswell in 2013, that says that the main goal of this type of research is understanding the essence of experiences about a phenomenon. In this case, our phenomenon is immersion programs, right? So, yes, also Creswell states in 2007 that it is very important to know the multiple perspectives from participants rather than a single one reality. That's why, because well, different perspectives give us a wider view of the things. Okay, taking this into account, we develop our instruments. Okay, so we develop three kind of instruments. The first one are the interviews. So we have a photo here of the interviews we did. Okay.
These interviews have 15 questions, and it was a semi-structured interview.
Mm-hmm. So if you can see, the questions are really focused on see how the immersion programs are developed, right? So these interviews were designed for the immersion programs managers and teachers. So well, for managers, we understood the people who is in charge of develop this kind of programs, right? So our second instrument are the surveys. We have a photo here. So we develop these
In
surveys.
this, yes. Well, in this service, we want to know the experiences of the participants. We can uh, say the participants were not just students from schools, but also people who wanted to learn a third language, in this case, English. So in this part, we have a question. They had the possibility to answer like the justification of their answer, but also they had to select a number from one being the less or the worst option, and five the better option. Um, they have to choose a number according to their experience in the program, but we want to clarify that we're going to be focused on the answers, on what they mean, and not in the numbers in this
Numbers.
part.
Yes. Okay. Our last instrument were the documents. So here you can see like the chart we use to select or categorize our documents. So what we're trying to do is to see how the programs of immersion has been documented in some kind of papers here in Colombia and in other parts of the world. So we read some articles, reports, and theses, not just writing in Colombia, but also writing in other countries.
Yes, and this is because despite of the program, the project survey is focused on the concept, the development of the concept here in Colombia. It's important to take into account that the theory and the basis or the foundations of immersion programs were or are in Canada and in Spain, also in Japan, or in different international countries. So we couldn't like reject that information because it was really important for establishing some principles that we're going to explain you
later.
later. Yes.
Okay, so well, as Karen said at the start of the presentation, this is an ongoing process. So we are just going with the data analysis. So for this, we had like a three main questions that were when, what, and where. And these are very related to the principles. So as you can see, the when goes to the duration of the programs. The what goes to the activities and the kind of curriculum that they use in the methodology approach of the program. And the where remains to the place and the population that participates in the programs. So here in this photo, you can see how we start analyzing our data. So we use different kind of processes.
Yes, we want to show you that we use also a different kinds of coding. Yes, for our data analysis. So we use the color coding to contrast the information and also to establish differences between what we found. And also we used coding with numbers because we wanted to classify the information according to the type of documents, the answers that we get from the participants in the case of the surveys. And also we classified or we used the like a mix of numbers and letters to rename the participants because we wanted to protect the, original names. So we use like a kind of
Nickname.
nickname for them.
Mhm. So, okay. Well, we already don't have like specific results, but we have found some things that remain very interesting for us. So the first thing is that immersion programs developed here in this country do not follow the principles proposed by the authors in the field. So we have like 8 main principles that are the following. So the first one is that the second language is the only or at least the highest means of instruction. So for this first principle, there are like 2 types of immersion programs that are developed here in Colombia. Nevertheless, here in Colombia, these programs are not like uh, easy to classify in those kind of programs, you know. The second one principle is that the curriculum used in the immersion is equivalent to the curriculum carried out in the non-immersion schools. So it means that the subjects that students usually see in the school have to uh, also being seen in the immersion process. Okay. The third one is that psychological help and another kind of support could be um, help for the native language by parents and the school, right? So in Colombia, we do not see those kind of things, nor even in non-bilingual schools, right? So it is difficult to find it in these kind of programs. The fourth principle is that the main purpose of these programs is to increase the bilingualism of the students. So, well, in this case, we notice that maybe this principle is applicable to the immersion programs, but the others no. So, the fifth principle is that the exposure to the second language is largely confined to the class. Okay. The sixth principle is that normally the students enter the whole class enter with the same level of English, and see we don't see those kind of things because well we know that the immersion programs try to unify different kind of students of different contexts, so that's why. Okay, the seventh principle that is applicable to the immersion programs here in Colombia is that the teachers must be bilingual. And the eighth principle that is very important is that the culture developed in the class is mainly carried out in the community in which the school is located. So it means that the cultural and the social interaction in this kind of programs are very important, and that is the like one of the things that we do not see here reflected in the immersion programs in the country. Okay, well.
We want to mention also that those principles are not like invented or are not like designed just at first and those work at the first time. In Canada, at the beginning, when the some experts, psychologists, and also teachers create the program, they tried three different versions of the immersion programs. So they change the principles, they adjust um, some things that they were not doing properly to
Mhm.
achieve this kind of immersion. Yeah, so that's why it's so important to keep these principles to have like the expected results in terms of the language proficiency and also the social development. It's important to mention also that these programs were not just focused in language, although it is the main purpose, but also are focused on the social and also on the self development. So that's why it's so important that these principles be kept.
Mhm. So, well, it is important to mention that these principles were taken from Johnson and Swain that stated in 1997. Okay, let's continue. So, here is the thing related to the principle I told you about the different kind of immersion programs in Colombia, and this is one of the results we saw just in the analysis we are developing just right now. That is like a percentage that we see in the immersion programs in Colombia. So the 75% of the programs here are one-way programs, and the 25 that are remaining uh, are two-way programs.
Also, in our results, something that we missed to say was that the stakeholders on the of the immersion, linguistic immersion programs in Colombia, do not have clear the concept. Yes, they took the concept of linguistic immersion as a trend or as a tendency. So, as this is a really like charming term, something that attracts the attention of different people in educational field. Uh, they call the different programs or the different methodologies they do as immersion, but it doesn't have to be with the different principles that we showed before, and they follow different dynamics and different kind of um, activities. They have a different result. They don't have like the properties of the original programs, and that's why we can say that the linguistic immersion concept was used more as a commercial or with commercial or market purposes and not with pedagogical purposes as it was expected to be.
Mhm. So taking into account these results, we also have some kind of conclusions that are uh, that we saw in the data analysis. So the first one is that the time the participants last in the immersion programs can vary from 2 weeks to 1 year. Okay. The second one is that the curriculum is related to ESP, English for specific purposes. And the last one is that
Yes.
go on.
So it doesn't follow like a specific curriculum. It is not just focused on language or on grammar or in different aspects of language, but also it has to be with different kind of activities related to social development, also to comprehension of the environment,
Mhm.
to different purposes.
Yes.
Uh, yeah.
Well, we think this is all for our presentation. We hope you really understand the main purpose of our project. Thank you.
Thank you.